Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today's video, as you can tell from the title, is going to be all about glutes. I have filmed my top 5 glute exercises that I think you need to be doing every single week. Every week, okay? These are the 5 movements that I incorporate into my routines, into all of my workout guides. Speaking of workout guides, there might be a new one coming very, very soon with an app with videos. So my top 5 exercises are gonna be in this video. Let's begin. So number 1 is going to be the classic hip thrust. If you're not doing hip thrusts, why? Hip thrusts are easily one of my favorite glute exercises. You can just get such a good squeeze at the very top of the movement, and then you can contract your glutes throughout the entire movement. I don't know, I just find it is such a good move to really isolate your glutes. Now when I say isolate, I mean just target your glute muscles versus your whole legs. So for example, if you do something like a squat, you're gonna be hitting a lot of quads and hamstrings along with it, where I find with hip thrusts, you're really isolating your glutes. Of course, you're still using other leg muscles, but most of the power from the movement is coming from your glutes. For the setup for this exercise, you're going to need a bench, a barbell with some plates, and some sort of barbell pad or something to protect your hips. You can use a towel, you can use a mat. My gym has this little blue foam thing that I sometimes like to use, or you can also order a barbell pad from Amazon or go get one at Sport Check or something like that. So as you can see here in this video, I just am setting up the bench, and then I will slide under the barbell and then put the mat on my lap, and then I thrust the bar up into the air, and then that is when I begin my reps. For my rep ranges that I usually do for hip thrusts, I usually do around 4 or 5 sets, and I aim for anywhere from 8 to 12 or 15 reps. Just depends on the weight that I'm doing. If you're using a heavier weight, you're gonna be doing less reps, something more around like 8 to 10. But if I'm using a lighter weight, then I'll be doing about 10 or 12 to 15 reps. So it just kind of depends what weight I'm using that day, but I usually do around 4 to 5 sets of hip thrusts. You can of course do more, you can do less, but that is kind of what I aim for. Personally, I like to add a little bit of a tempo into my hip thrust, so I'll do a slower eccentric, which is the negative portion of the movement. So when you're like lowering the bar, I like to count a couple seconds down and then thrust up quickly and hold it at the top. I like to do a pause at the top to really squeeze my glutes before lowering down again. I just find that I get a really good contraction if you do that pause at the top versus just like thrusting and dropping the weight down again. So some form tips that I'm going to give you for hip thrusts are going to be to keep your upper back flat on the bench, and you can either tuck your chin in like that for the entire movement, but I find I get kind of nauseous if I keep my chin tucked the whole time, just because you're like looking straight down. I don't know, it just, for some people it makes them nauseous to have your chin tucked. So I just kind of keep my head neutral. You want your spine to be neutral, and I will look straight ahead into the mirror as I thrust up and then lower down again. So I'm just looking straight ahead. You don't want to be like tilting your head backwards or anything like that. You also don't want to be really arching your back. You want to keep it straight. So instead of your back being like this, you're going to suck your abs in so that your back is flat. This is super important. It will also help you squeeze your glutes at the very top of the movement. And as for my feet, I keep my feet around shoulder width apart, and I will point my toes outwards a little bit. I just find that's more of a natural path for my knees to be tracking, versus if I put them straight, I find I get a little bit of knee pain. So I like to tilt my feet out a little bit into a little bit of a V, and again, around shoulder width apart. You can also go wider if you want. And I find the further you place your feet away from the bar, the more hamstring action you're gonna get. So you wanna aim for like a 90 degrees with your shins. So you want your shins to basically be straight when you thrust up. Yeah, if your feet are too close to you, you're gonna be using a lot of your quads to do the movement. I also recommend pushing into the ground with your heels. That'll also help contract your glutes a little bit more. Now there are some variations of a hip thrust that you can do. You can put a resistance band around your knees when you're doing them. That'll create a little bit of resistance. You can also do a glute bridge, which means you take the bench completely out of the movement and you'll just do a hip thrust basically from the ground. So your upper back will be flat on the ground. This is a lot smaller range of motion, but it is really good for your glutes as well. You can also do one leg glute bridges. I like to do a glute bridge on the ground with one leg as like a warm up. So I'll do like a couple sets of each glute just to kind of like activate each side. Yeah, I think that's gonna be it for hip thrusts. And by the way, these are in order of like my favorites for building glutes. So hip thrust is number 1. Number 2 is going to be deadlifts. Deadlifts are also a great movement for your back because you're pulling the bar up, you're holding it, you're using your back muscles. So you can do them on back day or you can do them on leg day. Actually, did just want to mention how many times I do glutes / legs per week. A lot of people think you need to do glutes like 3 times a week to see progress. I would actually collapse and die if I tried to do glutes more than twice a week. I do glutes probably once every week, but I also do F45, so it's kind of like a full body workout is what F45 is, but I do like 1 leg day per week at this point because I just get so sore from my 1 leg day. I go like all out, I go really heavy. Sometimes I will do 2 leg days a week. So I'll do like squats and hip thrusts on one of the days and then deadlifts and other things on the next day. That's just kind of how I split it up. Yeah, just wanted to throw that in there because a lot of people think you need to train glutes like every day or train them 3 times a week to see progress. No, you need to recover. You need to give your muscles enough time to recover or you're not going to build those muscles. If you're just tearing them apart, not giving them enough time to recover, how are they supposed to grow? Okay, the setup for deadlifts, there are 2 types of deadlifts you can do. You can do a sumo form, which is when your legs are far apart. You can do the standard, like normal deadlift form where your feet are about shoulder width apart. I usually do the shoulder width apart movement. I can go much, much heavier if I do this stance, but I actually just tried sumos for the first time in probably 3 years and they were great. Like amazing. It's a bit weird trying to like get the positioning right and get like my grip right, but I loved them. I find with sumos, you can really squeeze and thrust your hips forward at the top of the movement. For this video, I did film the standard deadlift form because that is what I've been doing for years. With deadlifts, there are a lot of form tips, things that you need to know for deadlifts so that you don't hurt yourself. The biggest, I'd say, form tip is not to curve your back or to arch your back. You need to keep your back neutral. Your spine needs to be neutral. Your head and neck need to be in line with your spine. You don't want to be like curving or like arching. That is how you injure your back. You could permanently injure your back, so just do not go too heavy right off the bat. If you're going so heavy that your back is starting to curve, drop the weight. You need to go lighter, check your ego. You want to keep the barbell as close to your shins as possible when you're pulling it up. You don't want to be like lifting it out. You want to be lifting it like straight up. So I actually drag the barbell, literally like I drag it across my shins as I'm lifting up, and your shins are going to be straight 90 degrees up and down when you're in the lowest position. And then you want to keep your lats locked down. So to lock your lats down, you're gonna roll your shoulders back and just pin them there. You want to keep them there. You don't want your shoulders to roll forwards like this. You need to keep them back, keep your chest up and open. That's how you want to keep your upper body. Also, you want to focus on your breathing at the very bottom of the movement before you lift it up. You want to take a big breath in and then lift the bar up. Now, I see a lot of guys tend to do this when they're trying to go like really heavy for reps, is when they're going down for the deadlift, they'll kind of just like drop the weight and then let it bounce off the ground and lift it up again. That's cheating. So you want to put the bar all the way down on the ground, pause for like 1 second, just briefly put it on the ground and then pick it back up again. The deadlift is a picking up motion. You're picking up something heavy from the ground. It's not a bounce and then see how many reps you can bounce the bar to do. You know, you also want to make sure you're not shrugging your shoulders. You want to keep your shoulders locked down with your lats. You don't want to be like using your traps to lift the bars up. Is that it for deadlift? If anyone has any other form tips, by the way, for any of these, put them below. I'm just kind of like spitting out whatever I kind of think of as I'm saying this video. I didn't like write a script or anything before this, so if I miss any form tips, don't yell at me, just put them in the comments below. Next up, number 3 as best movements for glutes is going to be lunges. So there are tons of variations of lunges, but my favorite is probably Bulgarians. And then I also really like sliding lunges or like slider lunges. I don't really know if they have a name, but you just like use a slider and like slide back into a lunge. As for rep ranges that I usually do for lunges, for Bulgarians, If I'm holding a barbell on my back and then putting my foot up, I'll usually do around 8 to 10 reps because it's gonna be a little bit heavier, it requires a bit more balance. And if I'm using like dumbbells or if I'm holding on to something, I'll try to do a little bit more reps. And then for the sliding lunges, I don't use much weight at all. Honestly, you can do these with no weight and you will feel the burn. I actually did sliding lunges for the first time at physiotherapy. If you wanna use weight, you can either put a barbell on your back, which is like, I don't know, kind of advanced in my opinion. I haven't even done those. What I usually do is hold like a 25 or 35 pound plate, just hold it to my chest. And the ones that have the little handles of mine work best because you can like put your hands in it and like hold it. You can also just hold a dumbbell, you can hold a kettlebell, just hold a weight here, basically. So it'll be more of like a front loaded movement that way. Okay, so we'll start with form tips for Bulgarians. Your foot placement, the front foot that's standing out, that's gonna be doing the lunging, that kind of depends on how your body is. Do you have long femurs? Are you trying to hit your quads more? Are you trying to hit your glutes more? Are you trying to hit your hamstrings? It just depends where it feels best for you. I like to keep a pretty close stance to the bench so that I can almost sit back into my Bulgarian lunges. I kind of like lean forwards and sit back into it. Does that make sense? To like lean forwards while also sitting back? Just kind of play around with how far your foot placement needs to be. It doesn't have to be exactly like mine. It doesn't have to be like anyone else's. It might be completely different for you depending on how flexible your hips are. There's like so many variables that go into that. So try out some different ones. But I do find that being closer to the bench a little bit and sitting back into it while kind of leaning forwards, that helps me like really like stretch out my glute muscle at the bottom of the movement, if you can picture that. And then when I stand up at the top, I try not to like lock my knee out or anything. I just kind of hold it, squeeze at the top, and then lower it down. You basically want to be squeezing your glute muscles for the entire movement. You don't want to like lose that contraction, so try to keep your glute contracted the entire time. Both forms of these lunges are good for muscle imbalances. So if you're like me and one glute is a lot stronger than the other glute, what you're gonna do is do like 10 or whatever reps on the weaker leg and then do 10 reps on the stronger leg, then go back to the weaker leg and add a couple extra reps just to get a couple more reps in there to help strengthen the weaker side. So that's a really good reason you should do one-legged movements like this. So sliding lunge tips are kind of the same as my Bulgarian tips, but what I will say is you don't want your knee to be going over your toe for this. If I'm doing the sliding lunges and my knee goes over my toe, then my quad really starts to take over. So you really want to be sitting back into it and then only using your glute to push yourself back up. You don't want to be engaging your quad to help you stand up. You really want to be using your glute and pushing with your heel to stand up. And the other leg that's standing on the slider, that's just sliding, it's not doing any work, it's just there. So try not to use that side of your leg to like push yourself to get up. Okay, I think that's it for lunges. There are also a ton of other lunges. There's like walking lunges, barbell, just like step back lunges, like alternating lunges. There's tons of different forms of lunges, but those two are just my favorites for targeting glutes and not using your quads as much. Okay, number 4, we have another one leg movement. So I really like doing one leg movements because I find it's easier to focus on one glute at a time almost, and it is helping with my muscle imbalance to strengthen that weaker side. So number 4 is going to be one leg RDLs. So RDLs stand for Romanian deadlifts. A Romanian deadlift is basically kind of like a straight leg deadlift, except you're bending your knees a little bit more and you're not like putting the barbell straight onto the ground like a normal deadlift. So it's kind of like in between a straight leg deadlift and a normal deadlift. That's what Romanian deadlift is. I like to use kettlebells. One kettlebell. You just hold onto the one kettlebell, or you can hold onto a dumbbell, or you can hold onto a barbell. As for reps and sets, I usually do about 3 or 4 sets, and I usually will superset these with something. So usually like another one leg movement. So for example, sliding lunges are a great thing to superset with this. So I'll do like sliding lunges superset with one leg RDLs. Your ass cheeks will be on fire. And for rep ranges, I usually go for about 15 reps. I can go a little bit further on this one because it's just an accessory movement. This isn't considered a compound movement. The compound movements are squats, deadlifts, hip thrusts. Those are like the compound movements, whereas this one is an accessory movement. So you can go like a bit lighter, do more reps. It's kind of more of a hypertrophy. Holy shit, I can't say hypertrophy. It's more of a hypertrophy. I'm not kidding. it is more of a hypertrophy move versus a strength movement. So I'm not focusing on going up in weight each week like I am with the compound movements. So when I'm doing one leg RDLs, I like to hold onto something because I don't want to be focusing on trying to steady myself. I just find I don't get as much of a contraction in my glute. I find my calves actually start to take over because my feet are really tight and I'm trying to hold my balance, so my calves start to get sore and just I'm not using my glute as much. So I find holding onto something helps, or you can put your inactive leg down very lightly on the ground. Like I literally will just touch my like big toe to the ground just so that I can balance and I'm not like swinging my other leg around everywhere and like wobbling. So with these one leg RDLs, you want to think about sticking your hips out back far. It's a hip hinge, so you hinge at the hips and you're sticking your hips out backwards kind of as far as you can. Think about like getting your belly button towards your thighs. I like to keep a bend in my knee. That's why it's more of a Romanian versus a straight leg. If you're doing a straight leg variation, your hamstrings will also be used a little bit more because you'll get a nice big stretch in your hamstrings. Whereas I find the RDLs just target your glute a lot more. If you're standing on your right leg to do the RDLs, you want to be holding the kettlebell in your left hand. Now with these one leg RDLs, a lot of the tips are going to be kind of similar to the deadlifts. So you don't want your shoulders rolling forward. You want to keep your back up straight. You don't have to go crazy heavy with this. You can keep it pretty light. You can do even like 20 reps. Your glutes will be burning. Like by the time I get to 12 or 15, my like ass cheek is on fire, especially if I'm supersetting with something. These are great. I think that's gonna be it for the one leg RDL tips. And now for the final movement number 5. You guys probably knew this one was coming, but squats. The basic barbell squat. Now the reason I didn't put this compound movement up with the other compound movements is because I'm a very quad dominant person. So I find squats target my quads quite a bit. I do feel it in my glutes. They're still one of the best glute builders. Just for me personally, I put it after these other two accessory movements just because I find I can contract my glutes stronger with those accessory movements versus squats. The squats is still easily one of my favorite movements. I do them every week. The sets for squats for me are a little bit crazy. You don't have to do exactly what I do for squats, but what I do is probably like about 10 sets in total when I'm doing squats. I usually do legs with Joey or Joey and Mike or Joey, Mike and Brady. You start with 1 to 2 sets of warm-ups with just the bar. So it'll just be the 45-pound bar. You just want to do some warm-ups, do some like reps, open your hips up a little bit. And then you're going to do a set of 10, like you add some weight, do a set of 10, and then do another set of around 8 to 10 once you add more weight. And then you're basically just like working your way up, adding weight, doing a little bit less reps as the weight gets heavier, almost like a pyramid set. So we work our way up to our working set weights. So your working set is the like goal weight that you were trying to get to, and then we'll do 3 sets at our working weight. It depends on the day. Sometimes I'll do like 5 to 6 reps as my working set, or sometimes I'll go a little bit heavier and then do 3 sets of 3 reps. So you're only doing 3. The boys work all the way up to 1 rep maxes, whereas I don't really see the need in doing my 1 rep max right now. I'm not like interested in doing it at the moment. And then once you've done your 3 working sets, you drop the weight down quite a bit and we'll do 3 more sets of 8 reps. So that's why you have to go a little bit lighter because you're doing more reps. That's a good way to do a compound movement, is to kind of pyramid your way up, because you don't just want to jump right into really heavy weight. You want to do a couple like warm-up sets before you get to your working sets. That goes for all the compound movements: squats, deadlifts, hip thrusts, all of them. There's also some variations. You can do front squats, so you like hold the bar like this under your fingers. You want to keep your elbows up high for that. I see a lot of people do front squats like this. No, like that. You can also do goblet squats. You can hold something to your chest like a kettlebell or a dumbbell. And now front squats use a lot of core, a lot of abs. Anything that's front loaded is going to use a lot of abs. So if you want to build some abs, do some front squats. Now my front squats are way weaker than my back squats. I just find my whole core is like not strong enough to hold the bar up. I really need to work on my front squats. So some form tips for squats. Squats are another movement that, like deadlifts, there's like a lot of things going on. You want to have your hands at a good placement. You don't want to have them like really far apart. I just kind of put them there where it feels comfortable. And the bar placement depends on what feels comfortable for you. So you can either do like a high bar squat, which is what most people do, which is the bar like kind of on top of your traps, or you can do what I do, which is a low bar squat. And I find I just get more glute activation when I'm doing a lower bar squat. Now it does feel weird. It takes a little bit to get used to. It's a personal preference. You don't have to do it. It's more of a like powerlifting stance to do like a low bar squat, but the bar will be kind of like lower on your like rear delt and trap area. And this does put a lot of pressure on the shoulders and the wrists because it's pretty like bent because it's low, but that's just what's more comfortable for me. You totally don't have to do that. That's just where I put the bar. Now, your knee path. What is important for your knee path is you don't want to have valgus knees. You don't want your knees to be caving in. You don't want them to point in. They need to be tracking in the right spot or you're going to hurt your knee. So when I say tracking, I just mean your knee needs to be in line with your toe. Try it right now. Try a squat. See if your knee stays in line with your toe or if it goes like outwards or inwards. You don't want it to be curving in any of those ways. Keep your knees in line with your toes. That should be what people are saying more, not the don't let your knees go over your toes, because some people have really long femurs. Like me, I have long ass femurs. Femurs are a part of your like hamstring. So if they're like super, super long, your knees are going to go over your toes a little bit. You also want to keep your chest up and back when you're doing squats. You don't want to be curving in like that. You don't want your back to be curving. So again, like with deadlifts, you don't want to curve or an arch. And your head needs to be neutral. You kind of want to be, I almost look like kind of like diagonally at the ground. If you're like squatting and like looking up into the air, that's not going to be good for your like spine or your neck. Or if you're like looking straight down to your feet, that's not great either. You want to keep your spine and your back neutral when you're doing your squats. Now, squatting takes a lot of hip mobility and a lot of ankle mobility. If you have really tight hips or tight like ankles and tight feet, then squats will be a little bit more difficult. So like roll out your feet, roll out your hips, work on that flexibility, guys, because it is very important for squats. You want to be aiming to get below parallel. So parallel means like your ass is parallel with the ground. You want to go a little bit below parallel, but if you're just starting, go for just parallel. Just try to hit parallel at least. You don't want to be doing quarter reps where you just like bounce. Now, when you're squatting, you kind of want to think about sitting like back into a chair. You can start with box squats if that's more comfortable, just so you can like get the form right, practice getting up out of the movement and using your glutes to stand up. Bar path is very important in squats. So your bar path is kind of just like where the bar is tracking. So just like your knees, you want them to track with your feet. You want your bar path to be straight up and down. When you're squatting, you don't want the bar to go random ways. The bar needs to be going straight up and down. So when you're at the top of the movement and you squat down, the bar should stay in the exact same bar path on a vertical platform. Now, something else that does help with my knees is to focus on pushing them out. So think about trying to almost spread the floor with your feet. Push your heel, dig your heels into the ground and try to spread the floor apart with your feet as you squat down. That should kind of, that's like a visual cue to kind of help you out. And how wide your feet apart are kind of depends on the person. I like a little bit of a wider stance. I find it's just easier on my knees. Is that it for squat moves? I think that's gonna be it for my top 5 glute exercises. I hope you guys like this video. Let me know if you think of any other form tips or anything and comment those below. Help each other out. I don't want anybody getting injured out here. If you guys aren't doing these moves, add them into your leg day program. Stay tuned for my new program, Gain with Gabby. Let me know if you want more videos like this for other body parts. Thanks for watching, guys.